Gabriel Nathan, Executive Director, OC87 Recovery Diaries.
To start, could you tell me a little bit about your own mental health journey?
Sure. I live with anxiety and depression and obsessive compulsive tendencies. I guess there was some discussion early on in therapy about obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and that was kind of toyed around with for a little bit and then ruled out, or I guess downgraded, if we want to look at mental health as stratified, as just having those tendencies, those obsessive compulsive tendencies, which manifest in some fun ways. But I wasn't formally diagnosed until, well, I first started going to therapy in college, and then took a little break after college because I couldn't afford therapy. And then I started going again in 2010. I had just started working at a locked inpatient psychiatric hospital, and I knew after a couple weeks on the job that I wasn't going to make it there unless I was seeing a therapist. So I went back to therapy, and I have not stopped since. Still with the same guy, and that's been my like formally diagnosed therapy or mental health journey with a professional. I've known that I've needed help since I was a kid, since I was a little boy. Very, very anxious kid, um, worried about everything under the sun, exposed to the news. I was watching the news all the time as like a 6 and 7 year old, 8 year old, which is probably not great. But was very worried about crime, was very worried about disease, very obsessed about my parents dying, um, forcing myself to stay awake all night because, bad things happen at night. And so it was constantly like in a state of hypervigilance, needed to stay awake, needed to be ready for whatever I thought was going to happen to us. Um, and, I tell this story a lot, and it always makes, I worry that it makes my mother seem like an asshole, but I did come up to her as a little boy. I guess I was 8 or 9 or 10. And I said, I need to talk to someone. And I said, I think there's something wrong with me. And she said, Gabriel, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. And I was not fine. But I took that as, if there is something wrong with you, you don't talk about it. Like, because I tried, and that's how it went. And so I just didn't talk about it anymore. I continued all the same behavior, and others started sprouting up, but that was the narrative, that I was fine and nothing was wrong. And it wasn't until I was in college and I had autonomy that I could go see someone on my own. I didn't need my mother's permission, didn't need her to drive me to therapy or whatever, that I started going.
So after that, what inspired you to help other people tell their own stories?
Um, so I, OC87 Recovery Diaries was around. I didn't found it. It was in existence since 2013. And I, when I found OC87 Recovery Diaries, I was working at the psychiatric hospital. I worked there for 3 years on the unit with the patients. And in the last 2 years I was there, I was in administration, community outreach, development, fundraising, that kind of thing. And so I was looking around for resources, either to seek grants or to learn about different mental health resources in the community. And I learned about this online storytelling platform called OC87 Recovery Diaries. And the founder, Bud Clayman, and I I was reading about him, and he and I shared a lot of similarities. We were both mentally ill, first of all. We're both Jewish, both from the main line area of the Philadelphia area. Um, uh, both of us very into writing and creativity. And I felt like this kind of kindred spirit with this guy. And so I met him, and we became friends. And then I started working for him part time while I was still working at the hospital. I was working at OC87 Recovery Diaries as a part time essay editor. So I would get an essay from someone from somewhere in the world living with a mental health challenge, and I would edit it. And I have a background in writing and editing. And I've been a writer for a very long time. And I loved the idea of marrying creativity and storytelling with mental health,
Yeah.
because it sounds cliche and corny, but like we all have a story to tell. And as I learned as a child, not everybody wants to, or not everybody wants those stories told. And my mother is from a different generation, where you don't talk about X, Y, Z, Q, and every letter in between. But that's changing. And there are people who want to talk and who want to tell their stories and share their experiences. And what I learned somewhere along the way is that that helps people feel not alone. Because the biggest lie that mental illness tells you is that you're crazy and everyone else is fine.
Yeah.
And you're fucked up, and you're the only one who's ever felt like this, and you're aberrant and weird, and you belong in a locked room or in the corner or whatever, when really there's millions and millions of people going through very similar things to you. And some of them are in West Africa, and some of them are in Ireland, and some of them are in India. And you know, it's really this kind of work, I think, really helps people feel not so isolated and not so um, like I'm God, I'm the only one. You're not. So that's why.
That's huge. I know for me, when I'm interviewing people, I feel like I am not alone because I live with bipolar disorder too. And I always think when I first was diagnosed, I'm the only one, and I can't see any videos or anything of other people going through it. And that's exactly, now you guys do tons of videos, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
do whatever I can to help people. So, how important is it for people to see these videos to know they're
It,
not alone?
to me, it's vital. And to me, it's even, I don't want to speak hyperbolically, but to me, it's suicide prevention.
Yeah.
Because suicide is very complex and it's very multifaceted, and it occurs for a lot of different reasons for every single person who takes their own life and everyone who contemplates it or attempts it. But one of the contributing factors to suicide is that isolative feeling, that whether you're going through a personal crisis, your home is being foreclosed on, your spouse is leaving you, or you have a serious and persistent mental illness, all of those things can feel A, like the sky is falling down, and B, like it's falling down on you. And that no one else has ever felt like this, and no one else has ever gotten through anything really terrible, right? Our organization puts forth one essay every single week and one professionally made documentary film a month, profiling people who have come out of the other side of really horrible things. We did a series of films about gunshot survivors, some of whom have quadriplegia now. Their lives are completely upside down after being hit in the spine with a bullet, but they are part of an emotional support group of young men of color who are also gunshot wound survivors, who are gaining strength from each other. And so that's 5 people in a room. right? But then we make a film about it and we put it up on YouTube, and then it's someone's Googling, gunshot survival, or looking that up on YouTube because they've been shot and they don't know how they'll ever get through this. And they see one of those films and it's like, oh my God moment. Like if it can happen to them, it can happen to me, of course, the actual situation, the wounding, but the getting through it
Yeah.
is happening to them, and it can also happen to you. It can also happen for you. And it's the same thing with people living with bipolar, living with schizophrenia, living with addiction. Um, these stories have the potential to help save lives, because they really dispel that myth that I can't, there's no possible way I can get to the other side of this. Um, and the people we profile in documentary films, and the people who write these essays, they have gotten through the suicide of loved ones. They're living with their serious and persistent mental illness. They're living with hearing voices. They've lived through homelessness. All of these things that seem insurmountable. That's why we call them stories of mental health empowerment, and change. They're all of those things, and hope also.
Have you seen more people willing to open up since you first started doing this?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, our submissions have increased significantly. And what I've also noticed is, so we have a policy where, a lot of mental health storytelling platforms, and I'm certainly not going to pretend we're the only one. Like there's other people doing similar things to us. I think we do it better. But anyway, um, other sites will allow you to publish either anonymously, or as, like, if I submitted an essay, I could submit it as Gabriel N, or make up a pseudonym, a completely different name. We do not allow that, at OC87 Recovery Diaries. We mandate, and from the very beginning, we have said, if you're going to come to us and you're going to publish a story about your mental health, you have to publish under your real full legal name. And we want pictures of you to intersperse through your essay. Um, None of this Gabriel N shit. Like, we want you to come to us as you are. Because if you insist on anonymity, if we give you anonymity, or we give you a pseudonym, or allow you to publish with your first name only, or whatever, we are perpetuating a stigma that there's something to be ashamed of. There's something to hide from,
Yeah.
simply by telling us part of your own life. Um, and that would be very wrong of us, I think, to perpetuate that. We don't want to be communicating the message that there's something wrong with you writing an essay about having bipolar disorder, right? Or being a suicide attempt survivor, or whatever. So what I noticed in the beginning was that when that would be made clear to authors, a significant amount would be like, you know what, JK, I'm out of here. And they would roll. Um, Increasingly, when I let people know that, we require your whole name and all of that, they're like, great, let's roll. Let's do it. Um, that is changing. And I love that. I think that's really, really great. Um, because there is nothing to be ashamed of. And if down the road you're applying for a job and some HR person or some supervisor Googles your name and finds your essay on OC87 Recovery Diaries and doesn't want to hire you because of that, fuck them.
Yeah.
Uh, Good. Like, you dodged a bullet as the author of that piece, because you don't want to work for a piece of shit like that anyway. So better you find out, you know, while they're hiring you and they're looking you up and all of that stuff. Um, that's what I tell people. Like, this is going to be online forever. So people are going to find you, potential lovers, people, everyone's Googling everyone. Like, they're going to find your essay, and be prepared for some reactions to not be nice. But, like, better to know that, I think. Um, so I feel like more and more people aren't as afraid. And I think that's great because that's how stigma changes. That's how that gets erased by people saying, I don't have anything to be ashamed about. You want to shame me for having a mental illness? That sounds like more your problem than
Yeah,
mine.
yeah.
If we're all still hiding under fake names and anonymity and this and this, then it's perpetuating the idea that we need to hide and we don't.
That's kind of like when I first was diagnosed when I was 37, so about 4 years ago, diagnosed with bipolar disorder 2, and I'm like, "Aha, I feel good." And then my work, human resources says, "Well, if you tell other people that makes them feel uncomfortable and all that." So then I'm back to hiding. So what you said with the job and coming forward, it does change your life.
If people are uncomfortable, it's probably because they're uneducated or they saw an episode of a TV show made 10 years ago where someone had bipolar and they were ripping their clothes off and running around the neighborhood naked in the middle of winter. And that's what they think bipolar is. So we have all these fucked up ideas that are not challenged. And a lot of people are very uneducated and, until they need to be, and that's also part of the work that our essays and our films do. They're educational, but they're not educational in a way of like someone in a suit standing in front of a PowerPoint going, all right, this is what bipolar 1 is, and this is what bipolar 2 is. And they're beautiful and creative works, but the education that they're doing is showing you that these are human beings. These are human beings like you, like me, um, but they're just trying to get by. They've got an illness, they're managing it. It's manageable. Curable, no. Manageable, yes. Um, and that's the education that people really need, I feel.
Well, with you helping so many people, giving them a platform, what do you do for your own mental health?
Not much. Frankly, I'm a very poor, and I think a lot of people who work in mental health um, are not their own best caretakers, and I'm certainly among them. I, you know, I would be really blowing smoke up your ass if I was like, well, this is my wellness toolkit and I have all these coping skills. I don't. I really don't. And I'm not super um, I'm not super tuned in to how I'm doing um, on a day-to-day basis or even like hourly. Or like I'll say things to my fiance. I'll be like, this has been like a really shit day, and she'll be like, well, yeah, but what about this lovely thing that happened? And this, my brain can really color um, everything pretty dark pretty quickly, so I don't have a great perspective a lot of the time. So um, you know I wish I had a better answer for you. I mean, I go to therapy once a month because that's what I can afford to do. Um, so that's good. Um, I love my time with my children. They're lovely and silly and ridiculous. Um, but that's stressful too. Um, I don't think there's a parent alive who would deny that. Um, but I just I just try to keep it together and I'm really trying to, I mean, my God, after like 13 years of therapy, I'm starting to get better at applying things that I learn in there and take them out of the office and use them in my daily life. Um, the biggest thing for me is not beating the shit out of myself. Um, and that's a constant, not judging myself and not being hard um, on myself. That's very difficult. Um, and actually, something that helps is the essays. It's the writers. It's the people in the films. I learn from everyone on the site, and uh, they're wonderful company to keep. They're good for my brain, I think.
Where do you want to see your mission, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, wow. Oh, I can get grandiose. I mean, like I would love if someone was like, "Oh, mental health storytelling, OC87 Recovery Diaries." That's it. They're the only game in town that matters. Um, you know, when I want to, like, I know someone at work who's been diagnosed with bipolar. Oh my God, I got to send them to OC87 Recovery Diaries and click on the bipolar heading, and all these essays come up and all these films. That's what I want. I want people to be like, this is the first thing I share when I know someone who's hurting, when I know someone whose kid is having their first psychotic break in college, when I know someone who just got fired from work because they had a manic episode and the boss freaked out. What I want this to be on everybody's lips when they think of mental health storytelling. That's what I want. I think it's a crime that we have made some of the most beautiful films that I know of on these subjects, and they have like a couple hundred views. That makes me crazy. Um, you know, when we put all this money and all this work and all of these fabulously talented filmmaking technicians, um, you know, and hours and hours of editing, and then people aren't seeing it. So, you know, I hope that people see our stuff and share it. It's all free. It's all you can do. We don't charge a subscription, nothing. It's just all here. Share it. Use it in trainings, mental health training. We did a series of films called Beneath the Vest, which is all about first responder mental health. So we profile a couple police officers, a 911 dispatcher. Nobody ever thinks about dispatchers when they're talking about first responders. They are literally the first,
Yeah.
because they're the first person. It's picking up the phone when you're calling 911. It's them, and they are traumatized. They have mental health issues. Um, we profiled a couple EMS providers and a volunteer firefighter. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police are using our films. We have police departments, sheriff's offices in Florida, in New York, um, using our films to train first responders. That's what I want. That's what I want.